Hi, my name's Ella McChrystal and this is The New Mind. Today's guest is Simon Nolan. Now, Simon's interesting for lots of different reasons. He's a body transformation coach. And actually, I'm not sure which way round you're going to hear this. It depends which one you listen to first, but I've had Simon's partner, Georgia, on the podcast too. They are of GS coaching and they do lots of body transformation stuff now. But Simon's journey is very multifaceted, not only in sport, but also in life. And there's going to be lots of really interesting parts to Simon's story. So please stay tuned for that. But the bit that I kind of want to go in with is the Men's Health magazine. So Simon was on the front cover of Men's Health magazine, which most of you will know. And that was kind of like a life-changing moment, I think, in many ways, which we're going to find all about now. So welcome, Simon.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So I mentioned their Men's Health.
Yeah.
But there's more to you than that. So that was 2013.
Yes.
You were on the cover of Men's Health magazine. Now that's some achievement.
Yeah, it was a very unexpected achievement as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, tell us why it was unexpected.
Unexpected in a sense that it was just my own transformation. I was doing it for me, and my coach at the time, over in Nottingham, Mark Coles, was basically kind of just putting me through my paces for 12 weeks, get me into the shape of my life, and then kind of just post out a couple of pictures. And then from there, we got contacted by the magazines and was like, would you like to come down to London and do a shoot?
So they literally saw your picture and went, welcome to our world.
Yeah, welcome to our world. Would you head down to Paramount Studios in London and do a shoot for us? So that was where we were heading on a train down there.
How exciting. So that must have been the first time that you realised, wow, I'm doing something right here.
Yeah, for me, that was a realisation that I'd probably been through a pretty decent transformation, I guess.
Yeah.
I thought even though there was like 60 kilos lost in total.
60 kilos?
Yeah, so it was quite, I still hadn't seen that myself mentally.
Yeah.
Because all I saw myself back was a little bit better off than where I thought I should have been anyway. So I didn't really over analyze it too much. But then obviously when Men's Health came calling, it was like really?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the dream for a lot of young men.
Yeah, hugely. Like for me, it's something I never expected.
No.
Ever.
So for you to lose 60 kilos, would you say that you were overweight before that transformation?
I would say overweight, but more so I just abused my body for such a period of time. And I don't think people correlate the way they look after themselves from a food and alcohol point of view as abuse.
Yeah, you're right.
Because they just see it as a norm of life or work life, etc., eating out with clients, those kind of things. They don't see it as a big thing.
No, you're right. It's very culturally acceptable.
Yeah, it's I call it a slow drug.
Yeah, no, you are right.
It's day by day. You see yourself every day in the mirror. You don't really see much change, but month by month, year by year, those changes can be phenomenal. And not only just physically, but obviously mentally, and then obviously through your health as well.
Yeah.
And you just kind of get stuck in that rut of thinking it is what it is.
So for you, what was the point where you went, right, I need to do a body transformation? Because that's quite extreme.
It was one client of mine, actually, that at the time when I was up in Scotland, who basically said that it looks like I'd put on a lot of weight over the last couple of years since over the period that he'd seen me. I was like, no, not a chance. That's not me. No. And it wasn't until I got back to my hotel that I realised that actually, no, I think he had a point. And I remember I actually contacted, I dropped a message across to two guys, both at Leicester Tigers, Ben Youngs and George Skivington, who were at Tigers at the time, and they got me in touch with a guy called Matt Lavelle to go and see him, and he'll sort you out from a nutrition standpoint. And that's where I did. Got straight in touch with Matt. Went down to Harley Street in London, got my bloods done with him, got all my fat testing done with him, got a plan put in place, and
a nutrition plan, is it?
Yeah, a nutrition plan. The hardest part for me to accept was the fact that I was basically pre-diabetic from my blood readings.
How old at that point?
So you're probably looking there at just touching 30.
So nearly 30, pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
Wow.
extremely overweight, huge levels of body fat, visceral fat. The pressure I was probably putting on my heart was immense.
Mm.
So yeah, it was, for me, it was a huge wake up call.
Yeah.
And it really shouldn't have took getting to there to realize it, but it did. And that's due to just kind of being away with affairs of kind of just focusing on life in terms of from a work aspect
So
and not
you
really
were in
looking
the,
after.
you weren't in the fitness industry then?
No, at that point then I was doing a lot of importing work. So I was actually a sales director for a company importing home furnishings across the globe, and basically I'd be away most weeks with work. So eating out with clients every night, just generally very unhealthy lifestyle of takeaways and eating out, and it can soon take its toll.
Yeah. Well, 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years it took for someone to go, hang on
Yeah,
a minute,
and
you've
then
put on
obviously
loads of weight.
I had my young son. Obviously, I doted on him. He was
Mm.
everything to me. So obviously, any other minutes or hours I had spare would make sure that he was perfect. Which is
Yeah.
ironic because I would always make sure that he was fed and watered perfectly well,
Just
with
not you.
nutrition, veg, everything, but not me.
Wow. Okay. So prior to that, I know from talking off camera that you were actually always into sport.
Yeah,
It sounds like the lifestyle was what took a toll
yeah.
because you were traveling, like you say. So it was hard for you to actually, but before that, you were heavily into all sorts of sports. So what were you doing as a child growing up?
So as a child, my mum and dad, I'm a twin, so my mum and dad would kind of like push us both into sports heavily, and I think being a twin makes you a very competitive kind of person,
Yeah.
because like there's no way on earth that my brother was beating me as much as he did at times to time. It was one of those things that you never wanted to happen. So we did cross country, we did sprint running, we did every sport we could do. We did. I played rugby at a competitive level, and then obviously through my golf. I started golf on a win really through work experience, and then I kind of just literally every single day was relentless at it, playing at a national level, playing for my county, and then going over to the Belfry, over to pro school, etc., where I started to then look at the avenue of going down and becoming a pro full time. And it was at that point when I was on the tour that I kind of fell out of love with the game. The
Mm.
cost involved of going around all over, really. I went to Europe, went all over to all the courses over the UK,
Wow.
and you got to see some of the golfers that are now some of the biggest golfers in the world. But the level of kind of cost to that is huge. And I
Yes.
saw that burden on my mum and dad,
Mm.
which was one of the reasons why I fell out of love with it,
Yeah.
because the pressure that it put me under, rather than enjoying the game, it became a financial pressure at a very young age. So
Wow.
that's where I kind of like went. I fell out of love with golf then, but still enjoyed sport, still enjoyed football, still enjoyed and I enjoyed just generally being quite fit.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it comes from a values point of view, whereas where the weight started to come on in those later years of in my 20s, going into my 30s, those later years was purely down to the fact that I didn't value my own health and well-being enough
Mm.
to put it in front of work
Mm.
by being relentless in terms of work, rather than actually trying to find a balance. And looking back, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I made.
But there's a backstory to all of this, which we're going to look into a little bit, because I know that work took over and you didn't value things and so on and so forth. And I don't know the timelines of this, but it just occurred to me because I know some stuff about you from talking earlier, that there might be links to earlier experiences that would have been, I don't know, part of you letting go of your self-care or well-being. It's probably nothing to do with it, but it leads nicely into that part of your life, which is that as a young person, you were mentioning earlier that your dad had a sports club.
Yes. The sports club which became a big part of it, and became a big part of my life, and actually still a big part of my life now. Since my dad passed away, he left his share of the club to my son in
Ah,
trust. So it's still there now. It's still up. It's still there. It's a place where I became very competitive at snooker and pool. Very competitive at tennis because there are tennis courts there. So
wow.
it always has that element of going back to sport again, something that my dad loved.
Yeah.
So,
And you, like you say, your dad died actually in 2014,
yes.
which I know was a life-changing moment as well. But during the time that you were helping out
Yep.
at the sports club, there was something that awful happened to you, and that probably did shape your brain in lots of different ways and gave you a kind of mindset, which I think is really helpful for the body transformation that you do now, the body transformation work with others. Sorry. So tell us a little bit about that time.
So, being at the Sports and Social Club, I was 15, 16, and that's where I was ultimately then doing my GCSEs. I used to work at the sports club, collecting glasses as would have been acceptable back in the day there. It was no
Yeah.
issue with that, earning a bit of pocket money. And also as well, I was able to then play pool and snooker as I wished, but also I was able to earn the money to then be able to play the golf that I wanted to play and
Yeah.
buy little bits, whether it be clothing for golf or whether it be new clubs, etc. But ultimately, the biggest part of it be going to pro school would be that I had to do very well at school. And I wouldn't say I struggled in academically. I just needed a focus, needed a
Yeah.
bit more concentration
Yeah.
to get me across the line and making sure that I aced my GCSEs. And at the time at the club, there was a guy there that was running the bar that had a very good kind of back history from what you could see of being very clever, knew his way, who basically wanted to help put me through my GCSEs in terms of almost like a private education of helping with my English, helping with my maths. He also managed to get me set up with my driving lessons the year after.
So he was very helpful.
Yeah, always helpful. Oh, I know someone who can do that for you. I'll get that done whilst you're doing your golf. Don't worry about that. So it was always like, from my dad's point of view, it was like, wow, this is an unbelievable opportunity for you. This person's going to do this for you, that for you, all based on their backstory, their own backstory, that their family had a car business and they could help that way. And that's how it would almost seem like a sponsorship almost to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, wow. Okay, this is cool. And, but it quickly changed. I would say probably 2 or 3 months into that helping journey, in the sense of where I was helping out at the club. Then this gentleman would then kind of help with my tuition, etc. That it quickly became apparent that it wasn't one way, in a sense that I then endured what would go on to be probably 2.5 years worth of physical abuse, through being basically hit pretty profusely over and over again for the smallest of errors, and sometimes not even errors that were made up to become errors, where I would be hit so hard that I wouldn't even be able to sleep on my side for weeks on end due to the damage to my ribs, or the damage to my back, wiping up blood from me being hit so hard that it's punctured areas of my body. But they were always in places that were hidden, and always where I would try and cover up then to make sure that I couldn't tell anyone. Because if I told everyone, I'd just be lying. It would be all made up, and that's what I was led to believe.
So he made you think that if you told anybody, basically no one's going to believe you.
Yeah.
Because he was so well respected that
Absolutely,
he used
yeah.
that.
And for me, if I did speak up, it would be a case that I would be letting my dad down.
Yeah.
Because my dad wanted to see me become a pro golfer. My dad wanted to see me become this and this. And it would almost, for me, I felt like if I speak up, it's just going to be me being ungrateful. It's just going to be me tic-tacking. It's going to be me telling tales. So I just need to just ride it out. It's just life.
I mean, he wasn't hitting you; he was battering you, really,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
Absolutely. And it was harder for me, even looking back, in the fact that it was actually in the grounds of the club. And whilst the club is still very, very fond to me, it's even now when I've been back into to that club, and I've been to the cellar, and I've it's changed a bit since it's had a revamp and it's had extension stuff, but the cellar's still the cellar. And
it's the smells of stuff as well, isn't it? You walk into somewhere and the smell
of
of
hops from a barrel.
Yeah.
the barrel that you're leaning over, that you've been hit profusely, where you've hit your head on, where you've been hit so hard you've literally knocked yourself out from the pain.
So bad. So bad.
And it's one of those things that kind of always stay with you, but they can also help shape you longer term as well. So
yeah, it can help shape you. And I think, when I talk to people, especially on this podcast, but also as clients and stuff, we always find that place where we can grow from it, because there's two options: you sink or swim.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
you've definitely been swimming.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that, which is phenomenal, because you've done so many different things in your life, men's health being one of them, actually. So this, it kind of leads me into, we know that later on you never tell anyone. He by the way, for the listeners, this guy that was doing this, you were about 15, 16, he was actually 40 something, wasn't he?
Yep.
He wasn't he was of an age where this was not excusable. He was using his position of power to abuse people.
Yep.
And we know it was people, because later on the police turn up at your door, don't they?
Yeah, so my son would have been about 3 at the time, I think. And this was probably just before my transformation started, to be honest.
Right. So there was, I wondered, I couldn't remember if
Yeah.
there was. I'm glad that there was.
There was probably just that little bit of a pause before the transformation started, in a sense that the police knocked at the door and they said that, do you know this guy? I was like, white as a sheet. White as never, I can still remember it now. Still remember the two police on the doorstep. Still know the two police officers' names.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, but I just still couldn't think, well, what do they know? And then they came in, sat down, they went through what had happened, etc. And it quickly became apparent that I was his first victim of a whole host of other victims, over 130, I believe, in total, of cases that were against him on it.
How was he able to do that so many times? Do you know?
I believe through the manipulation manipulation of exactly what he did to me.
But he had access, didn't he? He had access to lots of people through
various clubs that he went to, various sporting clubs. And it always seemed to be the targets were those that were people desperate to get somewhere in life. Desperate, maybe not from I wouldn't say the best background, but the most affluent background, in terms of very wealthy parents, where I wouldn't say it wouldn't happen, but there would be less chance of it happening, in a sense that you would probably end up going down the private tuition route. You would probably be able to go down another little route, but he came across as so plausible, being from that private background, that he knew his way in. He knew his way to mould it, and just manipulated the parents first, and then went after the children.
Which is so common in people that abuse, be it physically, sexually or mentally. They always go to the place where I'm going to gain trust first, then no one's going to guess.
He had the trust of every individual at the club. Not one individual doubted him ever. And even when the case came to light after the knock on the door and all the evidence put together, people could still not get their head around it, and still couldn't quite believe that it was right, and they thought there must be something that's gone wrong here. So even then you think, wow, this is a few years on now. And
he did a good job at manipulating a community, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely, and not just one community, a couple of 3 or 4 communities. Wherever he went, he was able to put his stamp on it and get it done exactly the way he wanted.
But he didn't, when because obviously the police were involved at this point, and they come to your house, they realise you're the first of many. But he wouldn't plead guilty, would he? So you then had to go to court.
Go to court. Went to court for all of the pre-hearings, and then we would have had to then give evidence for the trial. And on the day of the trial, he then pleaded guilty that morning.
Once he'd got you all there to relive that trauma, then he decides to plead guilty.
I think he honestly thought everyone would back down
and
just not do anything. And if we did back down, then there would be no case.
He was just pushing his luck again, weren't he? See how far he could push it.
And ultimately he then pleaded guilty with a view that he would get a lesser sentence. But he still got the upper rate of the sentence. Was released after half because he did plead guilty,
Mm.
but I think he's remained on a register for the rest of his life, and was on a tag for 3 or 4 years after his release still.
So, I mean, by this point, you've got a 3-year-old, you said there.
Yeah.
You know, you probably you probably put it to the back of your mind. I'm not saying you forgot about it, but, you know, you just parked it somewhere.
Yeah, my main responsibility to them was making sure that my son had the upbringing that he would wish for, the upbringing that I would want to give, with no stone unturned.
Yeah.
And to try and then just get on with life, really.
But then there was a moment where your mental health started to suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my mental health suffered. It was a breakdown in a relationship, and also a struggling area of the business. My mental health really took a toll, to the point where I ended up at what's known as the Bradgate unit, near where I was living. And it was only there, speaking to one of the specialists at this unit, that I kind of realised the traumas that I was going through, and the actual triggers of what these were kind of coming through at this part of my life now. So it was...
You'd parked it?
Yeah, parked it years ago. It was like, it was gone. Done with now, dealt with in court, sentenced, everything was fine. No issues.
So this moment of realisation that they diagnosed you with PTSD, or said you were suffering from PTSD.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, I haven't been in the military. I've not seen anyone blown up. I haven't got PTSD. And then you started to find out more about PTSD. There's PTSD and there's complex PTSD. Complex PTSD is ongoing, long-term, often more tied to abusive situations and so on. But also your dad had died.
Yeah, 2014, he passed away after a 13-month battle with cancer. We managed to be able to do things that I'm glad we did do, but losing him early still is hard to accept, because he was so tough that you just think, this man's not going anywhere. He's going to outlive me. He's literally like one of those dogs you have at home that just keep going. And you think, this dog's not giving up. And that was literally like my dad. So I never envisaged that would not be the case.
Yeah.
So, and also as well, his bond with my son was so special.
Yeah.
That I knew my pain was also for my son, because it's like he'd lost one of his best mates. So it was a hard one in that sense, but it kind of just then curtailed from there, really, health wise, because there was that one person you'd want to speak to was not around anymore.
Yes. And then after having relationship difficulties, it all just came to a head.
Yeah. All just kind of curtailed into a big snowball effect. All I ever wanted to do was try and make everyone else happy, and ultimately it's a case of then my mental health making a crash dive as a result of it. It just snowballed, from nowhere. It was mind-blowing, really, at that moment.
So do you think, because to be able to park that level of abuse, to be able to park the court case, go through that re-traumatizing yourself, well, not you doing it to yourself, but the situation doing it to you, and then losing your dad, do you think like the people-pleasing aspect, the buying everyone everything they wanted and working harder, and that snowball effect, was that a form of disassociation, do you think? Was it a way of avoiding?
Massively. Thinking that you can kind of just keep emotions in check, keep everything in check through almost just being the yes man, I guess. Trying not to disagree, trying not to do anything else out. And that's where, for me, even like my transformation was very hard, because there was elements of it then that actually meant that I couldn't always say yes.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I've got to flip it now and be a little bit selfish now to get where I need to get.
You'd never been like that before.
No, so all of a sudden having those coaches there that told me that it's okay, that's the right thing to do now, was hard, because it's not the right thing to do. I can't. I'm ungrateful if I don't do X, Y, and Z. It's not ungrateful. It's just that you're on a different path.
That's interesting. So do you think that was learnt from being beaten when you made, even if the mistake was made up by the abuser?
Yeah.
if you made a mistake, you were going to get very badly punished.
Yeah.
So your job at that age, when your brain is still developing, that prefrontal cortex where analysis takes place, logic takes place, emotional regulation takes place, is still developing.
Yeah.
But you're being groomed and manipulated to think that everything's your responsibility. Therefore, if you're not pleasing me, I'm going to beat the shit out of you.
Pretty much, yeah.
And
Exactly
that's what was there.
Yeah, and that then remains there in a sense that from a trauma point of view and from me, from a confrontation point of view, I don't like confrontation. I hate the confrontation. So if there's a way I can escape it, even if it means I come out of it worse, then so be it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it, how delicate our brains are.
Oh, hugely, yeah.
And it's so important because if we don't understand that, especially now you're a parent, you've been, luckily, you've been through this, so you can really educate. I don't mean luckily that you've been through it, but you've got the information, the lived experience to really educate your son on how to spot the predators, avoid it.
Massively. And like even Georgia will say as well, like Isaac, my son, is known as the BFG. And it always has been. He's taller than me now.
Wow. Because you're quite tall. How tall are you?
I'm 6'2" and he's over me just now.
How old is he? 15?
15, yeah.
Uh-oh, he's going to be massive.
He is the gentle giant. He's so sensitive. I remember him when he was at primary school. On one of his reports, there was one of the teachers that put, I don't know how he does it, but he knows. Whenever he's almost like a dog. When you're having a bad day, he knows it, and he will just come up, he will hug you, kiss you on the head, and then he'll go off. And the teacher was saying, but he knows I'm having a bad day, but I've not even said anything. I said, because he knows. He looks at everything in such articulate detail, and I believe there's elements of that he sees from where he's seen me grow up, and he looks at my body language so often, and I'm mindful of it now, especially if I'm running tight on time and you can see the pressure on my face, or you can see slight stress, because I tend to just not say anything. I tend to just, everything's normal, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But he knows. I'm like, man, these two, and because we're like two peas in a pod, it's hard.
It's interesting because you've got a twin.
Yeah.
But it feels like Isaac's your twin, like your twin soul.
Yes. Oh God, yeah. He's literally like mini me.
Yeah.
He is mini me to me. He's
wow.
Yeah. We just click, and it sometimes I'm like, oh God, he just knows. I wish he didn't.
Do you know what though? It makes me wonder, because if he didn't have you sort of being there, does he know about your story, by the way?
So he knows elements, but he doesn't know everything. But I think as time goes on, he will understand it more as he's getting older.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because he's at the age you were.
Yeah. And I think it's important he does to know the right from wrong. But it's also important to know that he also has a voice.
Yes.
Which is the biggest thing for me, because I didn't have that voice. And that's something that I still find hard now a little bit, that I didn't back myself enough to be able to speak up. I didn't back myself enough to be able to stop it happening to all of the other people, which is hard to take. But I think even in that situation again, I think I still would have found it hard to have spoken up, just purely because of the level of manipulation that was there. And even now I look at it and go, wow, that's an incredible job he's done. Incredible job.
You see, the problem is with these people that do this, is that you were talking about Isaac there, and the reason I said, does Isaac know your story, is because I was thinking, wow, Isaac's 15, that's how old you were, and he's really sensitive and really like open to everybody else's thoughts and really intuitive, and that could make someone vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because they're so in tune that they're carrying stuff for other people. And you know, these manipulative people will go for those sensitive souls.
Massively.
They'll choose them because they know they can manipulate them, because they're so sensitive and they carry everybody else's concerns and pain.
Yeah.
So I'm going to protect you because I'm sensitive and I can't cope with you not being okay. So I'm going to make sure you're okay by keeping your secret.
Yeah.
And actually you said you didn't have a voice. It wasn't that you didn't have a voice. It's that he manipulated you.
Yeah.
Into thinking that if you said anything, your dad was going to suffer.
Yeah.
and actually, because you were so sensitive and so kind and so loving and all the things that Isaac are, this man could tap into that.
Yeah.
And that's who they choose. And also, you know, the amount of people that I've worked with that have been abused, including me, that go, why didn't I say sooner? Or, you know, there was a situation actually for me when I was about 13, I was raped by a 20-year-old man. And I never felt comfortable about talking about that because I'd already been through the position of being sexually abused. Oh, well, you know, what will people think? That's how
Yeah.
they get you. What will people think? You're conditioned that way.
They have no perception of themselves, but they want you to make sure that you have a big perception of yourself.
Absolutely. And that is why I'm saying to you, like, no one is ever responsible for anything other than the abuser. And when people carry that part of themselves, the guilt, fundamentally, you wouldn't feel guilty if you weren't a good person.
Yeah.
People feel guilty because they're good. Yeah. You look at these people like the guy that did this to you. He doesn't feel guilt because he's not a good person.
No.
So
no level of guilt there when he was taking everyone to court day in, day out, when he was still not giving a plea and not even answering what his name was.
Yes.
Just because he thought, it's not my problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I work with clients, not that you're mine, but when I work with clients and they feel guilty, I say, just every time you notice the guilt, just remind yourself it's because you're a good person.
Yeah.
Because good people feel guilt.
A good way to look at it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's something that helped me as well when I was feeling guilty. Like, I only feel guilty because I care. Yeah. And if I didn't care, I'd be like the people that hurt people. Yeah. And that's not, I'm not saying I've never hurt someone, but I've never intentionally hurt someone. And I think that's a really good lesson from everybody else's experiences when listeners are joining us in these journeys, in these stories, and they listen to that and they'll hear you and they'll say, oh mate, you shouldn't feel guilty, but they might be carrying guilt themselves. Yeah. And so it's really important to share these stories so we can have these conversations so that people can go, oh yeah, actually good people do feel guilty, so that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
And that's a really positive way of thinking about it. But also for your son, because he's so like you, you know, I think you're right. I think we all, children in particular, need to be taught how to use their voice. Yeah. And how to feel confident to speak up despite the feelings of fear. Because I'm sure that was a factor for you, was it?
Hugely. I mean, for me, more than anything, the fear was everything. For me, it was like, this is my dad's club.
Mm.
This is everything to my dad.
Yeah.
If I speak up now, he'll have to leave the club.
Yeah.
He'll have to sell his shares. He'll walk away from it.
Mm.
It'd be a laughing stock because of me telling tales.
Yeah.
That was always my fear.
Wow.
And actually, the fear was actually made up.
Mm. And given to you by this man.
By the perpetrator, yeah. But,
as you said earlier on, you know, you have used it to really be, I think, after you understood PTSD and then you've gone through that work, but I think even before that, whatever pain there was, you've definitely used it as a platform, because aside from the body transformation business that you run with Georgia, you have had quite great success in other businesses as well.
Yeah, pretty much everything that I set myself out at, I would concentrate on being the very, very best I could possibly be. Through being relentless, I just wouldn't stop with it. But even in this point there, the one thing that I always made sure that from a physical aspect, I maintained my health.
Yeah. So had you had the transfer? You had the transformation.
So through the first part of it, when I went after the big blue chip companies from this business, I hadn't had the transformation. Through the later parts of the transformation, when I got through the transformation, that's when I had. But actually, my workload actually only got better. My actual ability to provide better results only got better, and that was only as a result of my own transformation, I believe.
So tell me why.
My output became better in a sense that my routine was more nailed.
Yeah.
I could wake up and function far better, far more easier. I could go for longer.
Mm.
I basically became a marathon worker.
You became a blooming robot.
So it was just relentless. I could literally work on zero sleep because I was so much more fitter and healthier, and how I was looking after myself from a food aspect, nutrition, that I couldn't be matched for time. So like working with China, you can China at 12 at midnight, it's 7 a.m. in the China. So I was like, right, okay, I'll stay up past midnight because then China will be starting work and I can get hold of them before anybody else does. And that was my mindset, in the sense that if I was working then, everyone else is sleeping. And I'm getting ahead. I'm a day ahead. Every single day I'm a day ahead.
This is I love this
So
conversation, by
that's
the way.
why it was important to me to make sure that I was so finely tuned. And George will say now, it's like, you still working, still working. Yeah, I'm still working. I've got bits to do here, bits to do here. And sometimes when everyone else is sleeping, it's when I find myself at the best.
I find I'm creative then.
Because
Yeah.
you're at peace.
Yeah.
You're at peace. You've got nothing around you. You don't need to look at your phone. You don't need to check see if someone's messaged you, see if
Yeah.
they're okay.
Yeah.
There's no worries about anything in the world other than what you're focused on in life.
Yeah.
And I think if you are then optimal in your own health, from a nutrition standpoint and how you look after yourself, you'll be primed, ready to be able to keep going. Whereas if you are struggling to sleep at night because you're overweight, struggling with digestion, and obviously the gut is a huge one.
Huge. My first podcast was about the gut.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are not able to put your digestion in your gut and everything in a good place, your mindset will not flourish. Not one bit.
And your microbiome is unique.
Yeah.
So you got to look after it.
Absolutely, yeah. Because the minute you stop looking after it, the minute you're on a cliff edge.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
Even now, with all the issues that people have from a digestive tract point of view, where things like IBS is always diagnosed, and colitis and Crohn's.
Yes, you're right. Overdiagnosed.
So overdiagnosed. Where actually, let's break your lifestyle down a bit and let's try and make some changes there.
Yeah.
You watch how things change quite rapidly.
Yes.
And I think it's just a quick fix.
Once you start breaking it down, as you do, you and Georgia both do, actually, there's so many simple, easy steps.
So many simple, and I think people forget that we all have the same 24 hours.
Yeah.
We've all got the same clock.
This reminds me of something you said a few minutes ago, or whenever it was, in the other room. We were talking about, don't think about the time, look at the hours and look at the maths in the hours.
Yeah.
Tell me that story again. It was a medic you were working with, wasn't it?
I was working with a really high-end doctor who's basically a top-end heart surgeon doing some huge work at one of the major hospitals. And he was pretty much on call a lot because he was one of the only people that could do this type of surgery. And he was really struggling to try and find a routine. And we broke his routine down, and a lot of the time he would work night shifts. So he was struggling to get his food in here, his food in there, trying to find a way of training, etc. So I flipped it on its head in the sense that I said, look, let's just 24 digits on a clock. There's no numbers on this clock. Where you start your day, it's where you start your day. Where you start your day could be 6 a.m. to you. It might not be 6 a.m. to someone else, but it is to you, let's say. So 6 a.m. to you, you're starting work at 7 a.m. So you're going to work at 7 a.m. and you're going to go till 7 p.m. That's your 12-hour shift. You've had your breakfast before, you've had your lunch in between that you would get whilst you're at work quickly. And then you would get home and you'd still be able to have your dinner at, let's say, 8 o'clock. You still then have that hour spare to go to a gym or to get out on that walk that you want to get out on, even if it's too dark at 8 o'clock and it's not in the summer months. You're able to then go to the gym and still do it. And the reason why I put this to him is in the sense that he joined a 24-hour gym so he could train, but then doesn't have time to train because he said there's just not enough hours in the day. But why did you join the gym? Well, because the opening hours meant I could go whenever. The opening hours meant that the gym also had no clock.
Yeah.
So whenever you went was your hour.
Yeah.
I don't care whether that hour is at 1 a.m. or whether the hour is at 3 a.m. or 7 p.m., 10 p.m. If it fits around your lifestyle and how you work and how you need to function to be optimal, then it will work. I said, and if you value it enough, it will definitely work. But the biggest thing that you have to get from it is the fact that you've already said in your own check-in that when you train for that hour a day, 4 days a week, the endorphins that it releases mentally for you mean that your week is so much more productive in other areas as a result.
Yes.
So now tell me why you can't find that hour in this 24-digit clock when I've just picked out the hour that you are going to go and train in. And I had no answer. There's nothing back because he was taking the clock going, oh, can't believe the time.
He was in the societal rules of time.
9 till 5. He was thinking 9 till 5, but 9 till 5 means nothing to you.
Yeah.
You're not 9 till 5.
Yeah.
You're working 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. Why is 9 till 5 matter to you?
Yeah.
9 to 5 means nothing to you.
Because he was probably exhausted, but I bet that was his food as well, because he probably wasn't eating properly.
But the easiest thing for him to do when he finished was 7 p.m. He'd go to the takeaway.
Yeah.
And he'd go, I'd go takeaway. And he said, by the time I finish with takeaway, I said, I don't want to go to the gym.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, I don't think anyone does want to go to the gym. So I said, what you ought to do, so when you do finish, have a bowl of oats, have a bagel, have something like that, have something light.
Give
get
you
yourself
fuel
to the gym, then go and get your takeaway on the way in if it's still something you really, really want. But I'll guarantee you, by the time you finished your hour workout at the gym, you won't be wanting a takeaway.
No.
I said you'll be wanting to look after yourself because you've already looked after yourself with the hour in the gym.
Yes.
So you've improved your mental health and your physical health in that hour. Why are you going to sabotage it? And 4 or 5 weeks after that, completely changed him.
I like to indulge myself in these types of conversations about the body, the mind, the business success. It's exciting to me. And what's interesting is that, and I said this on George's episode actually, which is I can do all of that in about 95% of my life. And then, as I said to her, there's a moment where it comes to my training and that I talk about cracking the code. I cannot crack that code, or I will not crack that code, or there's something that's stopping me getting to crack that code. So for those people, I asked this to Georgia, I'm interested in your answer, where they you can see they're doing everything and they're obviously prioritizing certain things. And it comes to their body and they just go, oh, I just can't do it. What do you think to those people that seem to understand it but just can't crack the code?
It's a case of actually putting a plan in place, having a start line and a finish line that's not too far apart, and keep challenging yourself monthly, or even 8 weekly, and having those mini goals set in place. Because a lot of the problem that we do is we set a goal here and we set a goal there. Let's say in 12 months, but you can't see 12 months away.
You're right. Yeah.
And as a result of it, 4 weeks in, you don't see much change because the goal is 12 months. It's a long way off still.
Yeah.
You think, I'll leave it. I'll start in a bit. Whereas if the goal has some kind of emphasis on it in the sense that it's short and sharp, you go, look, I've got to give up 8 weeks of my life here to see if this works. It'll never end up being 8 weeks. It'll end up being a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
Because in the 8 weeks, you'll build it into the routine that you've already got that's very good.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, it then works far better.
What I would ask then is if someone truly believes that it's really difficult to start because this is what I want and it's almost impossible to look like you, Simon, or whatever, where do they start? Because we spoke about cracking the code, but there's also a starting point to that code.
The starting point is that the one big thing that everybody needs in life is food.
Yeah.
Everybody has to eat. So you can start by changing no elements of your life other than the food that you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
That alone will also trigger in here changes instantly because of the food that you're able to feed your brain.
Yeah.
Which will also have an instant reaction in how you will then approach life from day to day. So if you're fueling yourself more effectively day to day, without even going to the gym, without even getting steps in, without even changing any other aspect of your life, you'll already start to see changes happening because you'll feel a bit more awake in the morning.
Yeah.
Got a bit more energy in the morning. And then I'll normally then go to a client and go, okay, good.
That's a great point,
what
actually.
About trying to get on some steps now? I want you to take just 10, 15 minutes on your lunch break. Get some steps in. It'll help you mentally. I want to get you in the right place mentally. And I know the importance of food and steps, not just from a physical aspect, but actually more so from a mental aspect.
Yes.
Because if you have the endorphins and your brain feels better, the brain will tell you, go with the change.
And what's interesting about that is so many coaches, and I know this is not you in Georgia, but they give out a sort of standard making quite a lot of money doing it as well, actually, if their business is on point, but not necessarily ethically correct, that they're giving out a standard plan. There's not really much bespoke in there.
Yep.
They're not really listening. They might go, yeah, done this a million times, I've got you. But they're not really listening to the person. Whereas I know from speaking to both of you that you are granular in your approach to each person.
No single person is the same.
No.
Everybody has, they may look the same, but everybody has an individual areas of their life that is of value to them that isn't values of someone else's life. They also have individual needs that are not maybe bigger needs than someone else has.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, it's far easier from our side of things to approach it with a completely custom approach for every single person and actually create them an avatar of where they want to be.
Yeah.
But also give them the avatar of where they're at now.
Yes.
For us, we just want to see people happy in life and healthy. I hate seeing people where they are depressed, unhealthy, struggling with their mental health, struggling with their physical health, because I've been there.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest reasons for me studying mental health was I would never, ever want to see anyone at a place like the Bradgate, which is an incredible facility. I would never want to see anyone there unless it was absolutely necessary.
Yes.
And if it was the last point of call.
Yes.
There always has to be a way to help them before they get there.
Yeah.
And I should never have got there, but I did. Now I need to learn and help others. I need to catch them before they end up there.
Yeah.
Whether that's a change in their lifestyle, a change in their career through changing their lifestyle, however that may be, I will work relentlessly until I get that person to that point.
Yeah.
Because I do not want them to go through what I did.
Well, it comes out in most episodes, actually, and it's the same with you. And it's the greatest thing that can come out of abuse is people that want to be the voice or their arms or the shoulder that they never had.
Yeah.
And that is the way that you make your experience of abuse or grief or whatever it is that and you've been through both, but whatever pain that you've been through, if you didn't have that voice, if you didn't have that arm, that shoulder, is to become that, then you are a cycle breaker and you are a cycle changer and you're paying it forward. And actually there's a little bit of magic that you can sprinkle into the world, and that's so important. And once you see that magic in yourself, maybe because you've gone through that process yourself, that transformation process yourself with someone else, then the world just benefits so much. And it is a universal energy.
Hugely. And that's why ultimately across us all, we're all trying to achieve the same goal of helping change people's lives for the better.
Yeah.
And trying to cut out of the, like you say, cut this cycle short.
Yeah.
And actually try and make choices now where we try and cut the threshold on this obesity.
Yeah.
Where hopefully further down the line, it becomes a thing where it's...
Well, we're looking at, instead of, which we spoke about earlier and I've spoke about a lot before, is the epigenetics, the generational trauma. Well, what you're talking about is generational growth and generational healing. And when we work together as coaches, as therapists, as whatever your role is, teachers, educators, whatever, we can actually be part of a generational growth, which we may not see, but we know we're part of. And that gives you that passion, that purpose, that drive. Absolutely. Because, I think for me, it's all energy. I know that true transformation comes through love. Now, I don't mean the love that you read about in the Disney books. I mean the love for doing something, or the love for being with someone, or the love for learning something. And when you love, when your heart is resonating with your mind, that is the beginning of transformation.
Absolutely. And that's the reason for me when I started my transformation, why then for the 10 years since then, I have studied this industry day in, day out. And that, like you say, comes thrould the love of it.
It's heart, mind.
Where I'm able to then pass on that information. And people say, but if you know so much, why do you then lean towards a mentor or another coach? Because I want to keep learning.
Yeah.
I want to never stop learning because there's always learning. As soon as I stop learning, I'm done in this game.
Yeah.
I will learn every single day.
Okay. So on the final note, and this is a big question, so don't rush to answer it. If you could look back on that 15-year-old boy, what would you say to him?
Back yourself.
Yeah.
Back yourself. Back yourself. It'd be a case of actually speaking up,
Mm.
but then still going after what you knew was right.
I'm sure people are going to listen to both you and Georgia and feel surer about taking that step, actually,
I hope
because
so. Even now, still like a dream.
yeah,
But I love it.
yeah, and that's clear. So, you know, just to sum it up, the boy that went through some stuff, that worked really, really hard, parked it all, built up this really good reputation at work, won loads, did really, really well, and then hit some hurdles again, but also ended up on Men's Health magazine, which is a massive achievement. And now you're giving that transformation to lots and lots of people. And I can't thank you both enough, but you personally for this episode. Thank you for coming on.
No, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
No, it's been brilliant. So where can people find you? I know Georgia has previously given you details, but where can they find you?
We've got our GS coaching page, Team GS Coaching on Instagram. And then I've got my personal page, which is GS Coaching Simon, and George's is GS Coaching Georgia. So yeah, you can see us on there. We're also on TikTok as well, as now is the craze with all of our little tips and things. So
yeah, great.
But yeah, Instagram's the place.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.